Hey guys, I'm Alexis Staley, and for my pedagogy presentation, I started and did using graphic novels in the classroom. As you can see on this title slide, I put 4 different graphic novel covers on here, and each of these are going to hit on race, mental health, or even the LGBTQ community, and I will talk about that further on in my presentation. So the first thing I want to talk about is language in graphic novel pedagogy and what it is. The use of graphic novels aid language pedagogy and learning as one way of implementing a multiliteracies approach that deepens reading engagement. Graphic novel is an especially unique pedagogical tool for incorporating analytical skills, both literary and visual, and more broadly cultural and historical, into even the earliest stages of language learning. English language learners. Graphic novels are a part of secondary education classrooms as a part of multiliteracies approach to help develop critical literacies of English language learners, which is ELL students, and graphic novels also help with English as a secondary language, which is ESL. And many people do not know, or teachers, that many students that are going to be reading graphic novels themselves are going to be second language learners. So I chose this picture, I think, that represented ESL students very well because, as you can see, it kind of goes around in a circle, connecting all the dots and pictures and images together. And as a teacher, we're going to have to be aware of students that are ESL learners because, like I said before, many of them are going to be wanting to read graphic novels more because they feel like they can relate to them more and it's easier for them to learn. And at the same time, there's going to be some ESL learners that are not going to get basically the hang of it, of reading graphic novels really quickly, and we're going to have to adapt to that. So some language skills that I noticed was, one example was one graphic novel used for language skills was Moz. Moz was a possible teaching resource that can facilitate critical literacies by using a critical literacy toolkit in a secondary school classroom. Reporting on collaborative pilot studies of teaching Moz in English as a second language. High school class. I conclude by examining how graphic novels can be used to develop a draw on students' multiliteracy practices. So if many of you don't know what Moz is itself, it's kind of about the Holocaust and the Nazis. As you can see, it has the sign in the background. And one thing that is also noticed right away is that the characters, or the main characters you call them, are mice themselves instead of real humans, and that's kind of a debate that I will talk about further in my presentation, why some people don't like graphic novels like this one. So language skills continued. Moz was by Art Spiegelman, and he hits on racism and immigrants that often resonate with ELL students, along with the information that Chun includes, which was the author in this article, is a study of graphic novels in an ELL classroom. This study that is done on Moz in the classroom has a positive outcome on many students. This study shows how students that are not used to being around racism and talking about it, along with immigrants, it showed that more students were willing to ask questions of things that they may not know or understood in the novel or just in general in life and the people around them, and got them thinking more and of issues around them. Most importantly, the students got more comfortable reading and talking about these kinds of issues. Now, when I say issues, many students that grow up in the world are going to struggle with certain things like racism, immigration, and I think that graphic novels and teachers themselves do a great way of trying to get the students more comfortable and talking about it when they are taught certain graphic novels like Moz. It opens their eyes to things like racism, how the author itself uses the mice as the characters and what that really means, and how the students can understand that and overcome basically what they are learning with racism. So built into curriculum, I thought these 2 posters that people have made, previous teachers, really hit on how graphic novels are read. So I'm going to start on the poster that's on the right. It used expert lingo. So when you look at the pictures, the little drawings, it says gutters, panels, and thought bubbles. So all 3 of these things are going to be completely different when you read a novel. Like, for instance, like if you see like a bubble, it's like a person talking or a character, like even dialogue. So like panels are gonna be like really long dialogue, I could say, or like storytelling, and like the gutters are gonna be between images that really kind of tell like what the narrative's saying. And the second one is reading left to right, top to bottom. So this is going to be important when reading graphic novels, so you actually can follow the storyline and what actually is happening. And the third one is read the pictures and words. So reading the pictures, you're going to see a lot of like different colors, shapes, sizes, differentiation of that all, and how the words fit in to explain the pictures and images very differently and more effective so you understand it. The fourth one is pay attention to font, balloons, and facial expressions. I think facial expressions is pretty straightforward, but you can really tell what the character is trying to get at if you can't get it through the words in the image itself. If the fonts are going to be bigger or italicized, you probably want to pay attention to that, since it's going to be more like thought upon or more important. The balloons itself is kind of like, just like the dialogue, which I talked about before with the thought bubbles. And the last one is interfere between panels. So in the picture it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. So the boxes between 1 and 4 that are squared around are going to be the ones that's probably more important to focus on. So like the first one's going to be like the beginning of the story or the image, and the fourth one's going to be kind of how it ends. So 2 and 3 is kind of like the dialogue that's between it. Kind of connects it all together and like tells the story of it. And the first picture that's on the left, I'm going to read and kind of explain what these mean compared to graphic novels and using them. It says, share what you notice about the lettering or fonts that the author chose. How do the bubbles of the author used for speech and thoughts look different? Is there any narration? Share how the author chose the narrative, the story. Share a character trait that fits the main character. That evidence can you find in the book? Does the author do anything unique that helps to understand what is happening? What do you think will happen after the story ends? So if you've ever read a graphic novel, they kind of end suddenly and you kind of really don't know what's going on. So I think like the last little thing that I read hits graphic novels right on the head, because like I said, some graphic novels do not end the way you want them or suddenly, and I kind of think that's the point of a graphic novel in itself, to get you thinking what's actually going to happen in the story, what happened to the character. And kind of like what I said with the picture on the right, the bubbles that the author uses to draw around the little characters are going to have a meaning, the font's going to have a meaning, and even how the author himself create the character and how the characteristics fit in, and like what kind of like foreshadowing you can see with the evidence that the novel itself is showing. So some pros and cons of using graphic novels. The first slide that I'm going to show is the positive effects that graphic novels have on students and teachers. So there is a positive support from graphic novels in the ELA classroom. It presents and reflects diverse identities. In many classrooms, work in tandem to help deepen students' reading engagement and reading levels. Graphic novels meet the informational and recreational needs of 21st century learners. A well-done graphic novel offers immediacy of the prose reading experience with the pictures of the words, working simultaneously, making a graphic novel not only something one reads, but something one sees as well, like reading and watching a movie at the same time. So this is important to understand, like reading and watching a movie at the same time. I think that some people think, oh, you're just looking at pictures and it's kind of like a movie in your head, which it is, but at the same time, you're going to have to pay attention to the wording. You're going to have to pay attention to the certain pictures that are being used and drawn, because sometimes what we think in our mind is like what's going on is really not happening in the graphic novel. And I think that's why teachers want to explain and teach graphic novels more, to be able to explain that you need to pay attention to these two different things. So continuation onto this page is going to be the cons of the realization that people do not want to use graphic novels in the classroom. So some concerned parents have it whether graphic novels are considered sub-literature that undermines literacy rather than enhances it. So many parents are thinking that, oh, you're reading a comic book, basically is like what a graphic novel is. You're just looking at the pictures, you're not reading it. Has nothing to do with Common Core standards. You're not teaching my child anything. The second one is our parents are also questioning the ability to teach graphic novels in the ELA classroom, and that is it even worth teaching. The third one is some novels portray violence or things that are inappropriate for some children. The idea of graphic novels in the classroom is still gaining popularity, but many schools are not for it. Teachers in some schools do not think that these type of novels serve a purpose of literary goals or even a historical study. Now, I think that this kind of all depends on what school you're at and what if you're rural or in the suburbs or in the city. Because, like I said, some novels are going to have violence in it. Some's going to have racism in it. Some's going to be about LGBTQ communities and everything like that. And so it kind of just depends where you're at and how you teach them to your students, if they're going to be able to understand and physically go along with it and keep it appropriate for students so they don't cross the line. If someone in your class you're teaching is it of a different race, if they're transgender, anything like that. So some Common Core standards that graphic novels hit on are analytical, literary, visual, divergent text structures, and even most state standards and Common Core English language arts and literacy standards can be taught via graphic novels, hinting that many graphic novels that teachers are teaching their students are going to have to focus on analyzing the text, analyzing the pictures and the visual aspects of it. So cultural aspects that are used in graphic novels incorporate cultural diversity within them. So on the very first title slide that I told you guys to look at, race is really something graphic novels hit on, and that was Yummy, which was in the right top hand corner. It talks about a kid, he's colored, he's African American, he gets bullied, and then he shoots this little girl, and everyone thinks, oh, he's a gangbanger, he's black. That's because he's doing that, because that's how he was raised, because of his color. The second one is LGBTQ community, and that was Honor Girl, which was in the bottom middle corner. She is a lesbian, basically, and everyone in that book is straight. And she comes out and everyone kind of looks at her differently, but she becomes who she really is and really opens up if you read that novel. And the last one is going to be about mental health, and that is Swallow Me Whole, which was at the bottom of the left corner. This one really hits on a lot of mental health issues, and if you read the book, it really does not show that this two main characters have mental illness until you're halfway through the book and you realize what is going on. And like I said before, how some graphic novels do not end the way you want them, or you know how it ended. This is one of the books that I'm talking about, because you have no idea what you read, if it even makes sense, and how it ends. And graphic novels today are being used increasingly by educators to engage reluctant readers, reach out to visual learners, and illustrate social and cultural themes and topics. Research is being done and conducted in classrooms that are teaching and using graphic novels. When the National Council for Accreditation of Teacher Education and American Library Association accredited programs investigated this, they saw that many, and after students began reading this, like graphic novels, that they could analyze the text better and pay attention to small details such as this, such as race, the LGBTQ community, and mental health. They're being more aware of these issues that are going on around them and being able to somewhat themselves help the community that they're living in with these type of issues. And this is my works cited page, and I hope you guys liked my presentation.